please join in a responsive chalice lighting reading by Tess Bomberger. The refrain to say is, "We travel this road together," and it should be up there on the screen. You can answer along with Mary Kay when I gesture, like that. Got it yet? All right. So let's practice that. Da-da-da-da-da. We travel this road together. Okay, you got it. From the busyness of every day, we gather once a week to remember who we are, to dream of who we might become. We travel this road together. As companions on this journey, we share the milestones we meet along the way. Individual moments of joy and sorrow become shared moments of comfort and celebration. We travel this road together. We share this journey across differences of belief and opinion because we value diversity and because of our care for one another. We travel this road together. Today, as we take the next steps, let us notice our fellow travelers, the burdens that they carry, the songs that inspire their hearts. We travel this road together. As we gather in beloved community, let us open the holy havens of our hearts. Let us share the sacred places of our souls, for we are pilgrims who share a common path. We travel this road together.
Good morning. So good to see so many faces. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning. My name is Mary Kay Stillwell, a worship associate team member here at the church. I'm pleased to extend a special welcome to Reverend Sherry Woodbury, settled minister at the First Unitarian Church of Omaha, who will be leading the service. Welcome. Over the last several years, the way we've met has often changed, but whether in person, on Zoom, on YouTube, live stream, or some other way of being that we can't imagine yet, worship together is a chance to deepen our connection with one another, with the sources of meaning in our lives, and to proclaim who we are and what we're about, throwing open our doors, the doors of our congregation, and proclaiming radical love and the welcome at the heart of our church. The Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. We have a big vision here, and we know that creating a loving community begins with welcome. So whether this is your first time or your 500th time, if you came here hopeful or heartbroken, whatever your age, your gender, your skin color, whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we enter into worship, take a moment to center yourselves. Find a comfortable place in your body. Take a few deep breaths, and together let us begin. Our opening hymn this morning is "Come Sing a Song with Me," number 246, and above on the screen.
It's actually 346.
346. Quibble.
Well, if anybody's looking.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
If there are any young people or people young at heart who would like to come forward for the story, you're welcome to do so now. We're going to do a little activity, so you might want to be up here. So our story today is called The Elephant in the Dark. And as you'll find out in the story, it's about people trying to figure something out. So we're going to do a little figuring out of our own. I have two bags. I have number 1, and I have number 2. So the children in the front, I'm going to pass these around to you. And what I want you to do, it's kind of hard with a paper bag, and it's definitely going to be loud. I'll talk loud in the microphone so the adults can hear over it. I want you to kind of feel around in the bag. What do you think is in this bag? But don't open it. Don't open it, because then I'm going to hear your guesses at the end. All right? So bag number 1 and bag number 2, and pass them to one another so everybody gets a shot at trying each of the bags. All right? Sound good? All right. The sound of children is wonderful. So this is called The Elephant in the Dark, retold by Minda Javerherben. Merchant Ahmad had brought a mysterious creature all the way from India. The news spread fast through the village. What could the huge beast be? Paxton, you can come forward if you want. They're trying to figure out what's in the bag. The villagers ran to the merchant's barn next to his house to see this strange creature. But the doors were locked, and the merchant, tired from his journey, was sound asleep. The rowdy crowd woke the merchant. He stuck his head out of the window and shouted, "It's too dark in the barn to see anything. Go home and let me sleep." But no one went home. Instead, they decided to see the beast for themselves. The first villager snuck into the dark barn. He tripped on a bucket of water and fell on the animal's long, slithery nose. This startled the villager and sent him running. Outside, he gathered himself. He puffed his chest and said, "The creature is like a snake." Next, a short man entered and reached very slowly into the dark. He wrapped his arms around one of the animal's legs and then rushed out to report. "People, the creature is not like a snake at all. Oh no, it's round and tall like a tree trunk." The third villager climbed inside the dark barn. The beast swept its huge ear against her face, and the woman ran out. "The creature is neither like a snake nor a tree trunk," she panted. "It's like a fan, a huge floppy fan." The 3 villagers argued excitedly. Others scratched their heads and disagreed. Each offered such different views. The fight escalated, and the remaining villagers stole into the dark barn to find out the truth for themselves. "It's like a leathery jug of water. It's skinny and hairy like a paintbrush. Oh, it's definitely sharp like a plow. It sounds like a horn." All day long, they called each other names and fought to prove each other wrong. Into the night, no one listened, but everyone shouted and shoved. When the sun finally rose the next morning, Merchant Ahmad led the beautiful, gentle creature to the river. But everyone was still too busy fighting to notice the large gray, what is that? The elephant. And no one noticed that they each only knew a small piece of the truth. So we kind of modeled that up here. Let's see, where's bag number 1? Is it that one? Okay. What were some guesses for bag number 1? What do you think? What do you think, Logan? Oh, say it real loud. Rocks. Okay, what do you think? A wooden toy car. All right. Anyone else have a guess for bag number 1? Shapes. Yeah, Corey.
It felt like it had feet.
Toys.
I guess something like a doll or something.
It felt like it had feet, so something like a doll. Yeah, Paxton? An elephant in that one. Xavier? Oh. This one is maracas, and bag number 2 is the car. Okay. So we're going to open this up. Bag number 1. Will you open that bag up and tell me what's in it? Yeah, it is stapled. You got to really rip into it. Can you tell us what's in it or show us? Oh, a giraffe, a toy giraffe was in bag number 1. I don't think anybody guessed giraffe. Okay, bag number 2. What were some guesses for bag number 2? Car.
Like a toy elephant.
A toy elephant.
Some kind of container.
Some kind of container. Okay, yeah. Any other guesses?
So Sasha's feet was right. Sasha's feet gets
All right, Paxton, you want to go ahead and open up number 2? And we'll see what's in that one. Got to rip it open. It's okay if you rip it. There you go. And that one was a toy dump truck.
okay. Center of the club.
Yeah. Yeah, let's show, yeah, we can show the live stream. We can show the adults up here. So we have, this was bag number 1. Can you bring that up here for me, Paxton? All right, and this was number 2. So just like the folks in our story, when they were in the dark, they couldn't see what the item was, and they all had different ideas, right? So this is all about perception. That's a big word, perception. How you see and think about the world, right? And that's okay if we all have different perceptions of different things, and we can all still get along and be friends, which is something that we're going to be talking about in Sunday school today and afterwards if you did our UU Pen Pal program. So thank you, everyone. With our next song, which somebody else is going to introduce, our children are welcome to head back to their classrooms, and I will show you where you're going because that's a little bit different this Sunday. Oh. All right, well, head on back. I'll meet you back there. Thanks, some exit music, Bill.
Each week, we join together as a community to mark important moments and movements in our lives. Some are joyful, some cause us sorrow. Both are present along the journey of our lives. Let's make a loving space for each other, whether we're together here or joining us electronically, and extend a warm welcome to our members, friends, and all those who share our larger work to preserve and to build a world of justice and compassion. Let us welcome those parts of ourselves, seen and often unseen and unattended. If anyone wishes, please say aloud or record in the chat box your name or the names of those you want remembered so that we may share the weight of sorrow or gently hold your concern in our hearts. I'll repeat the names spoken here, and Bob will help me out with the chat and repeat the names that show up there.
The family of Jim Garver.
The family of Jim Garver. Dana.
The victims of the fire in central Nebraska.
Oh, the victims of the fire in central Nebraska.
Chris and Mark.
Chris and Mark.
Mindy and her family.
Lizzie?
Mindy.
Mindy and her family, I'm sorry. The people of Ukraine.
From the chat, sorrow, the 1-year anniversary of Trey's mother Alice's death.
Now let us join with those who wish to celebrate a milestone or stepping stone in joy. Please say or record your name or the names of those you want us to remember in celebration. The Nebraska rowing team.
My sister Deirdre.
My sister, Denise's sister, Deidre.
Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Yes, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Judge Jackson.
Leo and Stephanie.
Yes,
Leo and Stephanie.
Leo and Stephanie.
Nothing in the chat for joys, but I have 3 joys to share. Firstly, Bill Carpenter as our guest musician this morning on piano, who's always lovely. There is a theme. Secondly, next Sunday, our choir returns. Hooray, hooray. And then third, the week after that, on the 24th, my saxophone quartet TCBSQ is performing here on Sunday morning. So lots of UCL music happening in the next month or so. Oh, we have I'm assuming is a sorrow, the death of Tilly Chandler from the chat.
Thank you, Bob. We acknowledge that everyone is not ready to share each experience, but choose to offer them in another way or hold them unspoken. Let us join with you in shared silence. Thank you for your presence. Please join with me for a second hymn, Find a Stillness of Some Number. Rumor has it, it's 352.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness.
on the wings of this music, I invite you to turn inward with me in a mood of meditation or prayer. I'll begin with a common prayer before we observe a period of silence for your own reflection or meditation. You may want to check your posture, rest your hands gently in your lap. Take a deep breath. O one who sings through all, we lift up our faces in gratitude for rain that greens the spring earth. We breathe in with gratitude the fresh breath of life. We give thanks for those we love and those who love us, for food that nourishes our bodies, for moments of peace and joy. We remember that we are never alone, for even in our loneliest moments, we are part of the great sparkling web of life. Voice still and small, deep inside all, let us hear you call inside us. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, hear also our lament. Amidst our own private losses and struggles, we join in the collective horror and sadness at struggles of many. The war in Ukraine, which has become so dark and desperate. Famine in East Africa. A deadly new COVID surge in China. People right here in Nebraska devastated by wildfires. Voice still and small, deep inside all. Give us the strength to move through the world, not in the way of violence, despair, and short-sighted acts of desperation, but in the way of love. Voice still and small, deep inside all. Give us the courage and clarity to look at our own communities and to understand how we are caught up in these same dynamics. Voice of gentlest love and fiercest unity, stir in us the direct experience of our interconnectedness with all, and kindle in us the vision and determination to act from that kinship. Calm our fears, quench our tears, sing through us, so that as hardship continues to cycle down generations and ripple through communities, we find ways to be part of the healing right here. Let our voices join in the great chorus of those seeking a way of love. So may it be. Amen. Let us hold silence for a moment together.
Each week, we take up a collection to support the work of the church and our partners in the community. We do this because just as we all grow from our participation in this community, we all give back through our time, our talent, and our treasures. Today, we'll have a collection in person, and you can also give by texting UCL Lincoln and the amount to 73256. That's UCL Lincoln, and the amount to 73256. The offering will now be gratefully received.
In our reading, I share with you an excerpt from a passage called The Way of Love from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna, a divine figure, is speaking to his human student and devotee, Arjuna. Here's part of what Krishna teaches to Arjuna. Still your mind in me, still yourself in me, and without doubt you shall be united with me, Lord of love, dwelling in your heart. But if you cannot still your mind in me, learn to do so through the practice of meditation. If you lack the will for such self-discipline, engage yourself in selfless service of all around you. For selfless service can lead you at last to me. If you are unable to do even this, surrender yourself to me in love, receiving success and failure with equal calmness as granted by me. Better indeed is knowledge than mechanical practice. Better than knowledge is meditation. But better still is surrender in love, because there follows immediate peace. And in this spirit of honoring many paths, I invite you to join me in singing number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are, and you can remain seated.
I'll play it through once, we'll all sing it through once, and then we'll do the round. Number one, number two.
Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of living. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, 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 whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, worshiper, lover of living. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. I can see you take surprises graciously in Lincoln. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been in Omaha for almost 2 years now, and I'm just beginning to meet some of my own people in person for the first time, and it's wonderful to be here in person with you. I've very much appreciated getting to know Oscar and having him as a colleague, and it's good to connect with more of you as well. The shining figure of Gandhi drew me in. Over 20 years ago, I went to India with an earnest sense of searching for purpose. Another American in my tour group had picked up on this while we were still waiting for the jet lag to wear off. A devoted meditator, she was delighted to discover that I had been interested in meditation for several years, but had not yet found a practice or a teacher. She put a little book in my hands that first night at the hotel in Kerala State, South India. The writer was meditation teacher Eknath Ishran, who had come from Kerala originally. I'd never heard his name before, but he had grown up in Gandhi's India and wrote often about Gandhi, whom I had long admired for his activism grounded in nonviolence. Your life is your message. That was the name of the book. Ishran shared this story in the introduction. Once, while Mahatma Gandhi's train was pulling slowly out of the station, a reporter ran up to him and asked for a message to take back to his people. Gandhi's reply was a hurried line scrawled on a scrap of paper. "My life is my message." I didn't have this language then, but I was drawn to Gandhi as an example of karma yoga, someone whose spiritual path is one of selfless service to others. Yoga, by the way, simply means a spiritual discipline. I know in this country, many of us associate it with hatha yoga, with the bodily poses. Oh, that's only one of many kinds of yoga. So I'm using the term yoga today in the broader sense that it's used in India of a spiritual discipline. Many other people I have admired, like Gandhi, have followed the path of karma yoga. Growing up, I had absorbed my mother's admiration and interest in both Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who studied Gandhi's movement and his teachings and brought them into the civil rights movement in our own country. No doubt you could name other exemplars of selfless service, people like Mother Teresa, Dorothy Day, Eddie Hillesum. I continue to be deeply moved by people whose caring for others leads them to careers of service and to citizen activism. The path of karma yoga, of spiritual growth through action and service, is a popular one among religious liberals. Now, selfless service sounds great, but it's a tricky business. To carry one toward illumination, more is required than the mere presence of good intention or positive action. It also requires the absence of ego investment. No hopes of being honored as Humanitarian of the Year. No need to have one's activism validated by posting a picture from the protest on social media and getting lots of likes. No expectation that listing volunteer service on your resume or LinkedIn profile will cause others to admire you and lead to better job opportunities. Service that is purely about helping others and not about reinforcing a positive image of myself. Ishran says, this is what makes karma yoga so difficult, why it takes a giant like Mahatma Gandhi to practice it to perfection. Gandhi saw his activism as an outgrowth of his spiritual principles. It was through his work for India's liberation from British rule that he moved toward the ultimate goal of the spiritual life. In the tradition of the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, Hindu scriptures, which introduce the idea of multiple spiritual paths available to any seeker, illumination is the goal and the unity of all life. The goal is to realize through direct experience that we are all deeply interconnected, to discover the truth that the divine force which underlies all reality is also in each person. It's the deepest, most enduring part of you, of me. In this understanding, the person who attains this realization is both deeply fulfilled within themselves and a positive, contagious force in the world around them. So karma yoga, or the path of service, is one of three paths long described in Indian scriptures. A fourth is often cited too, and that's the one that I was drawn to next in my own journey. You see, in all his writings, including the book that was placed in my eager hands there in Kerala State, South India, Ishran gives instruction in meditation and encouragement to take it up. So starting that first night in the Kerala hotel, while I was still shaking off the jet lag, I began to practice his method of meditation. This is Raja Yoga, the royal path, the way of meditation. Meditation in this tradition is about stilling all the waves in the mind. Ishran's particular method utilizes inspirational passages for this purpose. The meditator memorizes a passage from a mystic or scripture, something positive, practical, and uplifting, be it from the West or the East, and slowly voices the passage in the mind, each word dropping like a water drop into a deep well. When the mind wanders, as it inevitably does, the meditator gently brings their attention back to the words of the inspirational passage. And this is repeated over and over. In this way, you train your mind to concentrate. That's a huge benefit all by itself. You also take deep into consciousness the ideals of the passage. The woman who gifted me with Ishran's book also gave me a couple of passages suitable for use in this type of meditation. At that point in my life, this was my mid-20s, I guess, I was averse to traditional religious language, especially from the Christian tradition. I had acquired some allergies during my fairly mild upbringing in a Protestant church. So along with the passage that was most often suggested to new meditators, the prayer of St. Francis, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace, a karma yoga choice if ever there was one, she also gave me a selection from the Tao Te Ching, a little book of wisdom that I told her I had become fond of in college. Can you coax your mind from its wandering and keep to the original oneness? Can you let your body become supple as a newborn child? The passage began. That worked for me, and so I was off on this new-to-me path of Raja Yoga. Over the next few years, I led a book study on Gandhi in the UU congregation where I was a member, and continued to pursue a path of service in my work and volunteer activities. I read more and more of Ishran's works and grew to admire and trust this exemplar of the path of meditation. And I learned more inspirational passages as I established my own meditation practice. And here's where another path merged in for me, Jnana Yoga, the path of wisdom. I learned more passages from the Tao Te Ching, still at that point carefully avoiding Judeo-Christian selections that would trip my triggers. Instead, I imbibed passages like Gandhi's most beloved selection from the Gita, and others from the Chandogya Upanishad and Yoga Vasishtha. In my spiritual reading at bedtime, I was drawn to Ishran's writings and commentaries that drew particularly from the Upanishads, a fountain of metaphysical thought, and the teachings of the dispassionate Buddha as well. There was plenty of wisdom there, and the exposure to it definitely had value to me. I've retained some of the things that really touched me at that time, but it was one thing to read and even comprehend a piece of wisdom while sitting in bed, or even to meditate on lofty words in my meditation corner. It's something else altogether to put that wisdom to practice in daily life. This is why Ishran observes that Jnana Yoga, the path of wisdom, is beyond the capacity of all but a handful of people in any age. For most people, this path alone will not take us to the goal. It's all very well, Ishran writes, to go about saying, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. But for most of us, how much effect would this have on consciousness? We would still get angry, still harbor resentments, still be subject to doubt and vacillation, as long as it is only an intellectual effort, Ishran concludes. This sort of exercise has nothing to do with jnana. In fact, there is a danger to it. Far from shrinking the ego, it can actually swell it and make us more acutely aware of ourselves. The Gita explains that those following the path of wisdom must meet a high bar to find success on this path. They must be, quote, with their senses subdued and minds serene and striving for the good of all beings. So no cravings, perfect impulse control, fully serene, already pure in heart. I would have to agree with Ishran when he says, to me, it is all very much like the escape clause you find in small print on the back of a contract. If you can practice this yoga, you don't need it. If you need it, you won't be able to practice it. So if you aren't one of the few people for whom the path of wisdom alone can lead to self-actualization, what are you to do? Well, consider the story about a villager in India who wanted to learn to meditate. Ishran tells it like this. For several weeks, following his teacher's instructions, the villager tried to fix his mind on the formless absolute. But his mind did nothing but wander. Finally, he went back to his teacher and complained, "Sir, I just can't keep my mind on the absolute. I don't know what it's like." The teacher got the hint and decided to take a more practical approach. "All right," he said, "what is it that appeals to you most deeply?" With some embarrassment, the villager replied, "My cow." "Very well," said the teacher, "go and meditate on your cow." That is one of the skills of a good spiritual teacher. They always know how to begin where you are. A while later, the teacher decided to look in on his new student. To his surprise, the man hadn't come out of his meditation room for days. His teacher pounded on the door. "Open up," he commanded. "What are you doing in there?" There came a faint answer, a little like a bellow. "Meditating." "Come out at once," the teacher repeated. "I have some instructions to give you about moderation." "Sir," came the reply, "I can't come out. My horns are too big to fit through the door." The story is a bit of a cautionary tale. Be careful what you choose as the focus of your devotion, it warns, because you become what you meditate on. The story also lifts up a fourth path, the path of love, bhakti yoga. The teacher knows that the path of devotion is a great default. It can work for just about anyone. People in every major religious tradition have practiced bhakti yoga. The path of devotion is perhaps the most common in the world because there is such power in love. This became more apparent to me as I continued to choose new passages for meditation and to memorize them. Despite my own preconception that the ways of service and wisdom were best for me, I found myself increasingly drawn to passages full of devotion, sacred poetry that kindles a sense of intimacy with a reality greater than my little self, words that taste like milk and honey and leave me overflowing with love. In meditation, Krishna told Arjuna and me, "Be aware of me always, adore me, make every act an offering to me, and you shall come to me. This I promise, for you are dear to me." Thomas à Kempis spoke to me of the wonderful effects of divine love, saying, "Love desires to be aloft and will not be kept back by anything low and mean." Mira's words sparked something in my being as she told her love story. "You were the tree, Krishna, and I the bird that sits on its branches singing. You were the river, Krishna, and I the fish that swims in joy from bank to bank." Rabbi Ezekri crooned to me in meditation, "Beloved of the soul, source of compassion, shape your servant to your will. Then your servant will run like a deer to bow before you. Your love will be sweeter than a honeycomb." And Swami Ramdas reassured me with words like these, "How can I describe thee, O divine mystery? Thou hast held me in thy arms. I am free, playful, and buoyant under thy assuring glance and tender care." Even just sharing these words with you now, a feeling arises of fullness and effulgence with love. My unexpected conversion to bhakti yoga happened gradually, and it had a powerful effect on me. Granted, it took me a little time to overcome my allergy to words like God and Lord, and to shed the associations that I had with them from my childhood Methodist Sunday school. But over the course of this exposure therapy of meditation on devotional passages, my aversion fell away. When the mystics use this kind of language, this God, this divine mother, this Krishna, is not a parental figure outside of me, hanging out somewhere in the stratosphere waiting to help people or to smite. Rather, whatever label is used for the divine, whatever the name, it points to a force that is seated in my very own heart. And love is a powerful force. It motivates, it connects, it can activate the will. Love goes a long way. And the more concrete the focus of that love, the more power is released, as that village meditator learned with his choice of his cow. That's why these scriptures and mystics use concrete images and names for the divine. I invite you to try a love experiment and see for yourself. Okay, so first, picture all the children in the world. Maybe you see a globe with, kids joining hands all around the world. And imagine you are sending waves of caring out to them all over the globe. Got that feeling? Okay, now, think of a single real child that you know and love. Picture that child. And now imagine hugging this particular child that you love. Was there any difference in the sensations in your heart area for all the children of the globe versus the one particular child that you know and love? Any involuntary smiles for the child that you love? It's much harder to love an abstraction than a face. Now, these 4 paths to spiritual development, karma, jnana, bhakti, and raja, or service, wisdom, love, and meditation, they're not necessarily separate. In practice, they may mingle and merge for many people. Gandhi studied the wisdom literature of his culture, meditating daily on passages from the Gita, and he was on fire with love. He wrote, "My life is an indivisible whole, and all my activities run into one another, and they all have their rise in my insatiable love of mankind." So he was really practicing several kinds of yoga. Ishran gives his own spiritual teacher, his grandmother, as another example. If someone had tried to convince Granny that she had her choice of wisdom, love, or selfless service, but not all 3 together, he notes, she would have found the idea absurd. Wisdom and service flow naturally from love, and all 3 are released through meditation and the allied disciplines. These 4 paths are also not limited to practitioners of faiths born in India. Love, service, wisdom, and meditation or contemplative prayer are paths in every major religious tradition. Consider Jesus. His sayings and many of his parables, like those that appear in the Gospels of the Bible and the Gnostic Gospels, I hear them now as wisdom teachings, imparting insight to those who have ears to hear. The stories about Jesus, healing, serving, sharing with the outcast, they give ample evidence of the way of service in Christianity. The Bible also tells of him regularly going off into the desert, into stillness and solitude to pray. And he lifts up the greatest teaching as this: love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So there they are, jnana, karma, raja, bhakti, all there, and the shining example of illumination that is Jesus. As Unitarian Universalists, our own free and responsible search for truth and meaning invites each one of us to discern the path that works best for us, be it the way of service, the way of love, the way of wisdom, the way of meditation, or some combination of these. And since we also covenant to promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth, we're called upon to respect and support the choices that others among us make, even if they're different from our own. Hear once more the final stanza of The Way of Love from the Bhagavad Gita. The divine figure Krishna offers this teaching to the spiritual aspirant. Still your mind and me, still yourself and me, and without doubt you shall be united with me, Lord of love, dwelling in your heart. But if you cannot still your mind in me, learn to do so through the practice of meditation. If you lack the will for such self-discipline, engage yourself in selfless service of all around you. For selfless service can lead you at last to me. If you are unable to do even this, surrender yourself to me in love, receiving success and failure with equal calmness as granted by me. Better indeed is knowledge than mechanical practice. Better than knowledge is meditation, but better still is surrender and love, because there follows immediate peace. May we each find the spiritual path that helps us forward in our own awakening. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn today is, I believe, number 295, Sing Out Praises for the Journey.
Searchers in the soul's deep yearnings, like our forebears in their time, we seek out the Spirit's wholeness in the endless human quest. Look inside your souls, the kindling of the hearth fire, pilgrims few. Find the Spirit, always restless, blinded in each heart and heart. Touch and hold that ancient yearning, kindling for a new-found truth. Stand we now upon the threshold, facing futures yet unknown. Heart behind us, wayside lost toll, built by those who knew wild roads. Guard we ere their sacred embers, carried in our minds and hearts.
Whatever path of awakening will help you at this time in your life to experience spiritual fulfillment and to give your best to the world, may you find your way on that path. And may we be companions to one another for the journey. Blessed be. Amen.